Look at your fridge right now. Chicken breast, ground beef, maybe a piece of salmon. Totally normal. Now try something. Picture a wolf steak sitting next to it, or a lion chop. Your stomach just turned a little, didn't it? And here's the strange part. Nobody taught you to feel that. No parent sat you down and said, never eat a tiger. You just know. Across every country, every religion, every century of human history, one rule keeps showing up with zero exceptions. We eat the hunted. We never eat the hunters. And once you understand why, you'll never look at your dinner plate the same way again. Stick around, because the last part of this isn't really about animals. It's about you. Let's start with the easy explanation. The one everybody assumes is true. Predators are dangerous, so we just never bothered hunting them for food. Makes sense on the surface, except it falls apart the second you think about it for more than 5 seconds. Humans have tamed wolves into dogs. We've ridden horses into war. We've trained hawks to hunt on command for us. Danger has never stopped us from getting close to an animal. So if it's not fear, what is it? The real answer starts with a number most people have never heard of: 10%. Back in 1942, an ecologist named Raymond Lindemann worked out something that quietly explains half of your dinner plate. Every time energy climbs one step up a food chain, roughly 90% of it just evaporates, burned off as heat, spent on breathing, wasted chasing down the next meal. Only about a tenth survives the jump, so a field of grass might produce 100 pounds of energy. That feeds maybe 10 pounds of deer, and that 10 pounds of deer is barely enough to build 1 pound of wolf. To grow a single pound of predator, nature needs to burn through 10 pounds of prey, which needed 100 pounds of plants underneath that. A predator isn't just meat, it's the tiny, expensive tip of an enormous, wasteful pyramid. Farming lions for dinner would mean farming an animal whose entire diet is other farmed animals. No civilization on Earth has ever had that kind of energy to throw away. The math killed the idea before it was ever tried, but energy is only the first problem. The second one is invisible, and it's been sitting quietly inside every apex predator that has ever lived. It's called biomagnification, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Picture a small fish absorbing a trace of mercury from the water it swims in. Barely anything. Then a bigger fish eats hundreds of those small fish, and it inherits all of that mercury at once. Then something bigger eats hundreds of those fish, and it inherits even more. The toxin never resets to zero. It only climbs. By the time you reach the very top of that chain, you're looking at an animal that has spent its entire life quietly collecting every trace of poison that ever touched anything below it. This is the actual reason doctors tell pregnant women to be careful with swordfish and shark. Not because those fish are inherently unhealthy, but because they've sat at the top of a chain for years, silently gathering everyone else's chemical leftovers. Now take that same principle and push it further up onto land into the body of something like a polar bear. Arctic hunters have known for generations never to touch one specific part of the animal, the liver. Not folklore, not superstition, hard-earned knowledge. In the late 1500s, a stranded European crew, desperate and starving, ignored that warning and ate polar bear liver. Within hours, they were violently ill, certain they were about to die. Centuries later, explorers on Antarctic expeditions ate sled dog liver out of sheer desperation and came down with blinding headaches, peeling skin, and dizziness that didn't fade for days. The cause, science eventually figured out, was vitamin A, not a mild excess, but an almost unbelievable overload. A polar bear stores vitamin A by the millions of units in its liver because it eats seals, which eat fish, which absorbed it from algae far below. Every rung up that ladder packed more in. One bite was enough to turn a nutrient into a poison. Arctic communities never ran a single lab test. They didn't have the word biomagnification. They just noticed that eating the liver of the animal at the top made people sick or killed them, and they turned that observation into a rule nobody was allowed to break. Then there's a problem that has nothing to do with poison at all. It's about what the muscle itself actually is. A prey animal, like a deer or a cow, spends its life grazing calmly, building soft, relaxed tissue. A predator doesn't get that luxury. Its entire existence is bursts of violence, sprinting, fighting, starving, then gorging, over and over. That kind of constant stress floods its muscles with adrenaline and cortisol and drains away the very things that make meat tender. The result is flesh that's tough, gamey, and often carries a sharp, musky edge from compounds built up over a lifetime of tension. Hunters who've actually tried mountain lion or wolf almost always describe it the same way: edible if your life depends on it, but never something you'd choose on a normal Tuesday. Compare that to the soft, marbled, fatty meat of an animal that lived quietly on plants. Prey animals evolved, in a sense, to be eaten. Predators evolved to do the eating. Their bodies were never built for your plate. And then there's the part that gets almost no attention: disease. Ask yourself which animals are biologically closest to you. Not cows, not chickens. Predators, especially the ones that hunt other warm-blooded mammals, just like you are one. That closeness is exactly what makes them risky. A pathogen human that can survive inside a fellow meat-eating mammal has a much easier path into your own body than one sitting quietly inside a plant-eating prey animal. Add to that the parasites a predator picks up from every sick, weak, or dying animal it has ever eaten across its lifetime, layered on top of each other the same way the toxins are. A single bite of predator meat isn't really one animal's risk. It's the compressed risk of an entire food chain handed to whoever eats it last. So how did humans figure all this out without a single microscope or lab? The same way we figure out most survival lessons, the hard way, over thousands of years. People who avoided predator meat simply lived longer and had more children than people who didn't. That pattern didn't stay a personal preference. It hardened into instinct. Researchers who study disgust, the psychologist Paul Rosen among them, have found that this aversion to eating carnivores shows up in children before anyone teaches it to them, and it appears in cultures that never had any contact with each other. You didn't learn to be repulsed by the idea of eating a lion. You inherited that feeling from every single ancestor who felt it too and survived because of it. Eventually, biology and culture lined up completely. Ancient dietary law in the Hebrew Bible explicitly bans eating birds of prey and clawed hunters, naming eagles and hawks directly. Islamic dietary law draws the same exact line, forbidding animals that kill with fangs or talons. Native hunting traditions across entirely separate continents landed on the identical unspoken rule. None of these cultures ever spoke to each other. None of them shared a religion, a language, or a coastline, and yet they all arrived at the same conclusion: eat the grazer, leave the hunter alone. Some anthropologists think there's a second layer here too. Many of these same predators were feared and worshipped, turned into gods and symbols of kings. It's hard to serve dinner out of a creature you've built a temple around. Now, the rule isn't completely absolute, and the exceptions actually prove the point instead of breaking it. Bear meat has shown up on tables in parts of Scandinavia, Russia, and North America for centuries, but almost always in small amounts, and always cooked until it's essentially sterilized, because everyone who ate it knew exactly what happened if they didn't. Lion meat has occasionally appeared during extreme famine in parts of Africa when every safer, cheaper option had already run out completely. That's not a counterexample. That's the rule confirming itself. Predator meat has always been the last resort, never the first choice. Even today, one of the only serious attempts to farm a predator at scale exists mainly to sell bones into traditional medicine markets, not to sell meat for dinner. And it remains controversial everywhere it happens. When an entire industry has to justify itself by avoiding the very thing it's supposedly raising the animal for, that tells you everything about how deep this aversion runs. It's also worth noticing what happens the moment humans quietly break their own rule without realizing it. Modern industrial farming has started sliding some of our safe animals a rung or two up the very ladder we spend thousands of years trying to avoid. Farmed salmon, which should sit low on the chain, are increasingly fed pellets made from other fish. Some chicken feed includes fish meal. Some cattle operations have used rendered animal protein instead of grass and grain. In small, quiet ways, we've been nudging our food animals closer to the predator end of the spectrum, and some researchers are only just beginning to ask what that might mean for the nutrients ending up on our plates. Your ancestors ran this experiment already, over thousands of years, without writing a single word of it down, and the results are still sitting in the food taboos of nearly every culture on Earth. Here's the twist though, and it's the part most people never see coming. The rule was never really about how hard predators are to catch. It was about what's already sitting quietly inside them long before the hunt even begins. Every toxin absorbed by everything they ever ate, every ounce of stress baked into their muscle, every parasite passed silently up the chain. All of it lands, concentrated in whoever eats them last. And that's where this turns back on you, because in a sense you are a predator too. You're sitting near the top of your own food chain, eating things that ate other things, day after day, year after year. Somewhere out there, a scientist could ask the exact same question about your body that Arctic hunters once asked about a polar bear's liver. What is quietly built up inside you from everything you've consumed over your entire life? The polar bear never got a say in what accumulated in its body. It simply lived at the top. You live at the top too. The only difference is you still get to choose what climbs up the chain and settles inside you.